While many players around the world praised Monster Train as one of the best deck builders around, I always found myself staring at my screen in confusion, just wondering where the excitement was. To me personally, it never looked particularly appealing, both in its design and its visual UI elements. You were put on a hell train with monsters who are at war with the heavens. It featured purely randomized deck building and challenging mechanics that didn't quite feel like you were really accomplishing much outside of the randomization. It just felt a bit too different compared to the other deck builders that I was playing at the time, so I could never fully grasp its appeal. But with Monster Train 2, the developers absolutely nailed it. In my eyes, it didn't just improve on the first game, it left it in the dust, and yet it was a direct continuation in story, character, classes, and synergies. Everything I found wrong with the original game was perfected here. A big part of why I disliked the first game came down to the difficulty, which I understand for some is the main reason it was so fun. Sometimes I knew exactly what I needed for a run, but the game leaned so heavily into RNG that it felt like I was always being set up to fail in the later stages unless I could break the game in some way. Even when I made the right decisions, I'd still lose every time, not because I played poorly, but because my good cards would just never show up. On top of that, the design of the first game just felt too generic. The very second I stepped onto Monster Train 2, I will admit, I had my doubts. It felt like the exact same game with a fresh coat of paint and nothing worth getting excited about. I think a lot of players may have felt the same way initially when they tried the demo, but that was only a small taste of what the game had to offer. Before we jump into the game, I want to talk about the only two issues that I can realistically think about. One is the terminology used. If you're not familiar with the first game, a lot of these effects, debuffs, and buffs can take some time to get used to through trial and error, like understanding that you can apply trample to a sweep unit and it will stack alongside the addition of corruption with each enemy hit, whereas you can't combine triple stack with double stack. It can end your runs prematurely because you were overly curious and wanted to try out something new. But if you're familiar with the original game, you will not run into this problem. Right-clicking for the information isn't always intuitive when you've got multiple units and you can't easily tell which ones have certain effects outside of the direct upgrades labeled on the left side corner or in the body text. On top of that, the way certain traits interact with specific scenarios isn't always clear. It takes a lot of time to click, and the first 10 runs or so can feel very overwhelming. The second issue isn't exactly a flaw with the game, but more about how it approaches the difficulty scaling. The same issue with the first game. As you climb higher into the Covenant levels, the challenge ramps up significantly, but rather than encouraging diversity, it often feels like the only real way forward is to break the game entirely with some insane synergies. But because it's so random with the starter cards and drafts, it takes a lot of time to master. Take Underlegion, Pyre, or Monstrosity builds for example. I've had runs with them with a strong secondary clan like the Lazarus, which turned my army into an unstoppable force, massive lines of fungi units stacked with 200 plus regen, multi-strike sweepers trampling everything with reanimation buffs on every floor with multi-strike sweeps. I even pulled a low-cost copy summon room that stacked several low-cost kernels with a regen support in the back on summons to create an immortal boss composition, using mechanics like trample from a squad leader to empower every layer of fungi troop. These kinds of builds don't just win, they absolutely obliterate and they become the builds that you want to chase after. That's what makes going through the High Covenant runs so exhilarating and frustrating at the same time. You're not surviving by the skin of your teeth, you're theory crafting the perfect storm, and when it works, it's pure chaos in the best ways possible. It's not much of an issue in the endgame, but more on the earlier ascents. You are sure to feel like it's just too punishing, but sticking it out will have you coming back to the game every single day for hundreds of hours. After sinking 20 hours into Monster Train 2 and maxing out half of the available clans, I thought to myself I had seen everything that this game had to offer, but boy was I wrong. The game keeps expanding, endgame bosses, dimensional portals, the 5 returning legions that add up to 10 factions in total, each came with their unique playstyles, card sets, covenant levels, and unlocks. While most rewards are just cosmetic card borders, the sheer volume of content makes it feel like this game will never truly end until you've gone through every single layer of difficulty and build. Moving on to a seemingly small group of outspoken players, there's a growing trend in the gaming community where it's immediately assumed that every single game is made with AI-generated stories, visuals, and temporary assets. I've played plenty of these types of games before, including ones that are loaded with NFT and Web3 elements, games with generated events, random encounters, clashing art styles, and flat storytelling. each and every one of them was terrible save for the rare 1%. So when I see people claiming that Shiny Shoe Studio used AI to make Monster Train or even Monster Train 2, it's honestly laughable. That's like accusing a new artist who struggles drawing hands of using AI, or assuming anybody who uses frequent punctuation quirks and writing, like the annoying M dashes, which is generally overused, to be generative AI. It's baseless and discouraging. In today's online world, people say whatever they want, and once a rumor spreads, even credible sources debunking it rarely matter, because most just often don't care. Sure, everything looks weird at times and it clashes a lot, but this is because each card or event is original and is showcased as to who the artists are. I found it to be far less generic than the first game, though that's a personal preference. If anything, this proves that the developers tried really hard to double down on creativity instead of cutting corners when it came to designing new elements. Monster Train 2 is metal as hell compared to the first game. The sequel feels like a massive step up in all the right areas. I just couldn't get past the original's UI, creature designs, music, and other interface features that really dug into my time trying to figure things out. Everything feels much more refined here. On top of that, the crossover of references from games like Cult of the Lamb, Balatro, and Inscription, and many others was quite the surprise. Though I completely understand the complaints from players who just don't want these references as events, when some of them are incredibly powerful or game-breaking. I also agree that there should be a toggle to allow players to disable them in the settings. Seeing the same events pop up in every run can get exhausting when you're hoping for something new or useful and you just end up with the same thing again and again. While a lot of these events and units offer a variety of art styles, some might feel like it clashes with everything else a little bit too much and would like it to be removed, which is a fair argument, though most players don't seem to mind. Because of that, it's unlikely anything about it will change. It's not that big of a deal unless you really zero in on it. The entire game still feels a lot like the first game, and that's perfectly fine. Too often a game blows up and the developers get overly eager to reinvent their systems, when fans are just really hoping for something familiar, but better. That's where the line is. Change too much too fast and you risk losing what made players love it in the first place. Keeping Monster Train 2 the same was a risk that the developers were willing to take, and I think that it paid off and felt like it expanded on a lot of the problems the original game had, whereas if it were a DLC, it would have not hit as good as it did. Monster Train 2 can be brutally challenging, but that's part of what makes it so engaging. The further you make it, the more you unlock. The more you unlock, the more creative your builds can become. With 10 different factions to mix and match, the possibilities feel endless, and the sheer amount of unlocks to 100% the game is absurd. No matter what combinations you pick or what kind of strategy you think you want, the game is constantly teasing you and tempting you to dive into new synergies and playstyles, and that is what sells the concept. Keep in mind that this is coming from somebody who loves to stick to one build for tens, if not hundreds of hours. I rarely feel that pull to try anything outside of the best for a certain class or a character. But here the game offers so many builds for so many different reasons. I didn't feel forced into a single playstyle, and if I did, I would always end up with something new and different. The more I played, the more I learned. The more I learned, the more willing I was to experiment. In the end, I came up with some really wild builds. A full train of whelp stacking hundreds of pyrogel with low cooldowns, massive multi-tank abominations stacking reanimate effects, damage buffs, spikes, and even minion summoning madness. I've never seen this much variety in a deck builder, and I'm loving every second of it. I've been helplessly coming back to this game each and every day because it's just that good, and as much as I don't want to unlock every achievement and feature, I still want to keep playing. This is when you know you've got a good game on your hands. In the original, you fought as the minions of hell aboard the Hell Train, fending off the forces of heaven. This time around, you are joining forces to face a new threat, which I will not spoil for anybody who is interested, though it is highly likely that you're just going to skip over this entire section anyways. What I will say for the few people that genuinely care about the story is that the optional narrative elements don't add a whole lot to the game. The writing feels half-baked and often just plain stupid. It doesn't sound smart and it doesn't add any real value to the experience. If anything, it interrupts the flow of gameplay and makes you wonder why it was there in the first place. For some, it might add some personality to each faction. To others, like myself, it just got in the way for a brief moment as we skipped through the optional bits. As somebody who didn't find much appeal with the original Monster Train, Monster Train 2 felt like a massive improvement across the board. It offers new synergies, a cleaner interface, better pacing, and it all comes together in a way that the first game never quite did for me. If you've been on the fence about picking it up, I can confidently say that I am happy with where this game has landed. That said, Monster Train 2 might feel a bit too pricey for those who believe games shouldn't cost more than $15, or for players in countries where games are naturally a lot more expensive to buy. Still, I would say that the price matches the value that you get, because you're getting weeks and dozens of hours of challenging, endlessly fun gameplay. If you're still hung up on the price, waiting for a big sale that fits your budget is always an option. I would recommend the first game too, if only I didn't personally dislike it so much. It's the exact same game after all, just a little less polished.